Good evening. This evening I'm going to talk about another 17th century English astrology book. This one is a little bit less well known, and if I hold it up to the camera here you can see that this particular copy is in a very poor state of external repair. Virtually all the spine is missing, but the boards are still there and you can still see the ties holding the book mostly together. There's a split just towards the end. Now obviously at some point this needs professional attention, which I haven't been able to afford so far. But if we open it and turn to the title page, you can see which book this actually is. First of all, there is a portrait of the author, and the name of the author is John Middleton. Let's see if we can... there we are, this way. And you can see the title page. And I'm going to read out the title page in full because in these days, when title pages tended to have extended titles, they gave quite a lot of detail about what was to expect in the work, so this in itself is quite relevant to a presentation on a book from this era. Practical astrology in two parts. The first part containeth an easy introduction to the whole art of astrology, showing the number and nature of the signs, planets, and aspects, together with several names and terms of astrology. Also, how to erect a figure of the heavens and to place the planets within, and how the student ought to proceed in the whole art. The second part showeth the resolution of all manner of horary questions, which concern the life of man, his estate, brethren, or short journeys. If the querent shall ever have children, of sickness, and how to find the nature and kind of the disease, also concerning marriages, lawsuits, public enemies, of things lost or stolen, with all other necessary questions whatsoever, together with several examples of coelestial figures erected for horary questions and judgments thereupon, whereby any man of an ordinary capacity may soon attain to the whole art thereof. By John Middleton, Philomath, licensed May the 4th, 1678, London, printed by J.C. for Richard Preston near Gray's Inn Gate in Holborn, 1679. There follows an address to the reader, and during the latter part of this address he attempts to account for why he put this book out. He says, "There has been something published of astrology since this work was began, and which I, living remote from London, had not the opportunity to see. But having lately perused them, with all respect to those artists, I find no reason to desist from the publication of this, hoping as to the scope intended it may, though less of price, be altogether as useful as Coley's Clavis, Thrasher's Jewbar, or any of our other modern treatises, I having endeavoured more plainness to weak capacities than any that yet have written. And if this small treatise receive your kind acceptance, it shall be but a taste of what you may hereafter expect from yours and Urania's servant, John Middleton." So he's basically marketing this book as a simpler work than existing works on horary astrology that were already in circulation, such as Coley's Clavis Astrologiae Elemata, which had been published in its definitive form just a few years earlier, 1676. In practice, to judge by the relatively few copies of this work that survive, it wasn't altogether successful. It wasn't a bestseller, seemingly. It sold probably considerably fewer copies than some of the longer works, such as that of Coley and certainly that of William Lilly. However, it's still interesting as a piece of 17th century history, coming as it did in 1679, on the heels of so many more famous works. A few dedications to the author. There was a habit in those days sometimes of other people singing the praises of an author at the start, and in poetic form. It's quite touching. We had this first one, which is signed H.C., which leads me to wonder if this could in fact be none other than Henry Coley. In laudem operis. In this fantastic age, whilst every fool usurps Apollo's fortune-telling stool, offers to prate at random peace or wars, and hucksters out 12-penny chops of stars, 'tis rare a sober artist should appear, but such, kind reader, thou art blessed with here, one that Urania's beauties doth expose, and in plain language all her secrets shows, who chides this freedom, and bids him give o'er, ashamed be thus, should take up all before. Yet the bold lad, neglectful of her cries, spreads her abroad, who hugs the dear fair prize, and sporting in these sheets through every page, begets a lusty artist for next age. But I'm too airy. Well, in the book each line, I'm sure is solid, except these of mine. So he was attempting a little bit of comedy there. The following page, there's another rather charming dedication, this one from Johannes Woodward. To the ingenious author of that useful treatise entitled Practical Astrology. The mind of man is so depraved that what it cannot comprehend 'twill seek to blot. Astrology by some has had the fate to be refused as vain and intricate, and planetary orbs to have influence on animals could scarce appear to sense, but by thy deep conceptions useful made, and all their secret powers here displayed, the planets' houses and conjunctions too, with their effects thou dost so plainly show, that whoso reads, though but with half an eye, may by thy book attain astrology. Run on, brave soul, till by thy works thou raise ne'er dying volumes to thy lasting praise. For who the flux of causes knows and reason, and for each action can elect a season, may soar in time above those orbs, and be shrouded with glory to eternity. Let others boast Zopyrus like they can, by the physiognomy unfold the man, or tell of Gadbury or Lilly's art, how much they do by their great skill impart. They'll find such obscure problems, high-flown strains, that cannot equal their desires or pains. But in this little volume naked lies the most profound of all their mysteries, and what in them we may theoric call, is here by thee made plain and practical. And there's one more little dedication, but I won't bother with that one. I think 2 gives you quite enough of a flavour. Now, the table of contents is quite interesting because although the first book is given over to the elementary aspects of astrology in general, for the most part, the last few parts of it actually have more in common with the second part of the work. From page 94 we start getting things very specifically about horary astrology. And the official second part starts on, or just before, page 111 and carries on right until the end of the book. And the main focus is on questions, horary questions related to each of the 12 houses in turn. It goes right up to page 282, so this is basically a practical treatise on horary astrology, which is attempting to be as simple as possible for people of no great intellectual pretensions to use. I think it has its little place in the history of 17th century astrology, even though it isn't one of the most celebrated works today. That was all I had to say about John Middleton's Practical Astrology in 2 parts. Thank you for listening this evening. Bye-bye.